Man, oh man, what is it about the Sunshine State? The third Floridian to join the presidential contest on the Republican side. With me right now, the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez. He joins the likes of Ron DeSantis, of course, the governor, Donald Trump, who calls Florida his home. Mayor, good to have you.
Good to be with you, Neil.
Why now? There's all sorts of gossip back and forth, Mayor, why you're doing this. One Politico piece has it that you're entering this process to muck things up for Ron DeSantis, and that it's not so much about Donald Trump, who so far has not said anything bad about you, as he often does with candidates who join the race, but not you. What do you say?
Well, I think I'm running for president because I have a unique vision for this country and a track record of success and a positive, inspirational message for the future. My track record of success starts with reducing taxes in my city, bringing back fiscal sanity. I inherited a turnaround job. Our city was broke when I got first elected. We now have the most reserves, the highest bond rating in history, and we just got upgraded right in the middle of this fiscal cliff debate in Washington. So that's part of it. I think the part of it was we also used our resources in a targeted fashion to increase funding for police while other cities defunded their police. And for that reason, we have the lowest homicide rate last year since 1964. I was born in 1977. This year, we're 40% below that number. And then, as you know, Neil, because I've talked about it a lot on your show, I focus on prosperity. I want to create the kind of economy for my children and my grandchildren, my unborn grandchildren, that leans into innovation. We're number one in the nation in wage growth. We're number one in the nation in tech job growth. And we have the lowest unemployment in America. And that is the kind of pro-America story that'll allow us to compete with the Chinas into the next generation.
Let me ask you a little bit about that. You talk about this from your perch as the mayor of Miami. Critics have said that that job, important as it is largely a ceremonial one. I had a chance to catch up with Carlos Jimenez, who looks at that as an unqualifier for you when it comes to running for president. I want you to respond to this.
I will never support Francis Suarez. I think that he is a complete fraud.
Why?
Why? Because he voted for Hillary Clinton, he voted for Andrew Gillum, and he voted for Joe Biden, all three. And so in what universe will a person that's voted that way in the past is going to get the Republican nomination? And there's many other things about Francis Suarez. I know that he weaves a really good tale, but believe me, I know Francis Suarez very well. I will never, ever support him for president.
All right, now he goes on to talk a little bit about your role as mayor. That gets a little personal here, but I did want to talk a little bit about who you've backed in the past. With Ron DeSantis, you didn't back him in 2018, but you did back the then Tallahassee mayor, Andrew Gillum, and that surprised a lot of folks. I think you did back then the governor in his reelection effort in 2022. But for Donald Trump, you didn't support him either in 2016 or 2020. So what's to stop Republicans from hearing that, saying he's not one of us?
Well, first of all, you haven't made it until you have a hater. So it's nice to have a hater, which means that I'm relevant. You don't want it to necessarily be someone from your backyard, but I think Congressman Jimenez has not taken his ginkgo biloba because he forgets that he's the one that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I voted for a Republican in 2016. I voted for a Republican in 2020. I wrote in Marco Rubio, my good friend, in 2016, and I wrote in Mike Pence in 2020. So I have no idea where he's getting
But neither
his fake
time
facts
did you write in or vote for Donald Trump, right? He was at the head of the ticket as the Republican standard bearer. Why not? I'm just curious.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I voted for the person who I thought would be best to be president at that time. And so you led the program by talking about, am I really running for president? And I'm telling you that I am, and the reasons why I am. And, and the misconception was, that I supported Andrew Gillum. I didn't support Andrew Gillum. I didn't raise money for Andrew Gillum. I didn't endorse Andrew Gillum.
You voted
I actually
for
gave
him.
money to
But you
Ron
voted
DeSantis.
for him, right?
I voted for him.
Okay.
I voted for him, and I'll tell you why. I gave money to Ron DeSantis in that primary, the same primary where he says of President Trump that he helped him when it wasn't smart to help him. And you know what? I never got a phone call saying thank you. I never got a follow-up. I never got a, hey, would you like to support me? Hey, would you like to endorse me? There was no relationship built. And frankly, he lost my city by 20 points. And so I barely won that governor's race and then turned on the person who who endorsed him and the people who helped him, like Susie Wiles and others. So that, to me, and by the way, I did support him in his reelection because I thought he was the best candidate. I actually did a fundraiser for him right after that election, and he came to my law office, and I raised money for the party, and he was there. So, you know, people don't see what goes on in the background, and people like to spin narratives because it benefits them, to be honest.
All right, but the fact of the matter is that you stand out, you know, with your Latino background as a rising star in your party. That's unmistakable. But, you know, Ron DeSantis could say, when I was running for re-election in 2022, I got almost 60% of the Latino vote. Who needs this guy? What do you say?
Well, this would be my contrast. When I got elected in 2017, I got elected by 85%. The year before, Democrats won Miami-Dade County by 30 points. Last year, Republicans won Miami-Dade County by 10 points. That's a 40-point swing, and I was reelected by 80% in the middle. Let's juxtapose that with Jacksonville, where the governor was the former congressman and supported the mayoral candidate who lost to a Democrat by 4 points. The prior Republican mayor, Lenny Curry, won it by 24 points. That is a negative 30-point almost swing for Democrats in his former congressional district. So my policies in Miami of keeping taxes low, keeping people safe, and leaning into innovation is what has created prosperity, #1 in wage growth, lowest unemployment. That is what motivates people to support conservative and Republican candidates. I like to make a difference. Sometimes he likes to make a statement.
Let me ask you a little bit about how you don't necessarily fit the party mold. That necessarily could be a huge problem. In many respects, neither does Donald Trump. But you have talked about climate change and what it's doing to Miami. Some Republicans, not all, sir, but some will look at that and say, well, wait a minute, that's a Democratic talking point. What do you say?
Well, I'm definitely not a typical Washington politician, that's for sure. And what I would say is, for us, our environment is part of our economy. We need fresh drinking water from our Everglades in order for us to live. And by the way, we've received money from a Republican legislature and a Republican government in our state, frankly, more than what we received from the infrastructure bill that was passed by Joe Biden. You know, we have hurricanes, as you know. We have weather events that we have to deal with on a constant basis. In 1992, when my father was the mayor, we had Hurricane Andrew, which had 200-mile-an-hour winds. We changed our building codes and adapted to that natural phenomenon, and now we are the most wind-resilient city in the world. So I think you can't put your head in the sand and pretend that a flooding doesn't happen. You can't put your head in the sand and pretend that hurricanes don't happen. As a mayor, you don't have the luxury of blaming somebody else. Hurricanes are not Republican or Democrat. You have to solve the problem, and that's what I've done as mayor, and that's what I'm going to continue to do as president.
I wanted to get your reaction, sir, to the Justice Department accusing the Minneapolis Police Department of rampant discrimination, unlawful conduct in a pretty scathing 89-page report, and they want to crack down on a police department that has overdone it. Since you dealt with the Floyd uprisings after his killing and responding strongly to that, what message are you sending as a candidate for president about the justification of that crackdown on the Minneapolis police?
Well, the message that I'm sending is police officers have the hardest job in America, and it should never be political to support the men and women in our law enforcement. They get paid the least amount of money with the most scrutiny and the most risk of anyone in the United States. And I'll tell you that in the city of Miami, we came out from a Justice Department investigation under my leadership as mayor. And last year, we had 235 officer-related complaints against 330,000 citizen interactions. That's less than 1/10 of 1%. So I would challenge anyone in corporate America to deliver that level of service, customer service to its customers. Well, apparently the Justice Department is saying, Mayor,
that did not happen in Minneapolis, that the investigation by the Justice Department found what they call systemic abuses by police that made what happened to George Floyd possible. What do you think of that?
You know, I haven't really dug into the Minneapolis investigation. I can tell you that we were under a Justice Department investigation, and I'm proud of the fact that we implemented accountability with our officers. And by the way, they want that accountability because they understand that it only takes one bad incident in a city for there to be a problem. And so the fact is, we've got a great department. I'm very proud of the way that we've led our department, and we've led our department not just in terms of officer-related conduct, but we've also done it by keeping our residents safe. And I think that is the primary duty of a police department.
You know, Mayor, before I let you go, and I know you have a very busy schedule, so we appreciate the time. You've referred often since your announcement, sir, to representing the next generation of leaders in this country. I'm paraphrasing here, but as best I can tell, you're 45, still a young man. I had ties older than you, but Ron DeSantis is 44, so he's actually younger than you. So were you referring to that next generation to Donald Trump, to Joe Biden, or Ron DeSantis, who's a year younger?
No, I think what I'm referring to is I gave a speech yesterday at the Ronald Reagan Library, and I want to be defined by what I'm for, not necessarily by what I'm against. And I'm also want to be defined by generational opportunities. I think if you really want to be generational, you can't. It's not just a buzzword. It's not just something that you say. It's something that you have to do. And I've done that by positioning my city in a way that has attracted $3 trillion in assets under managed companies to move.
Oh, no doubt. But I guess what I'm asking, I'm sorry, if you're in your 70s or let's say you're 80, is it time to go out to pasture? You shouldn't be running for president.
Well, I think it's a lot harder to be able to shift the economy of a country into the dynamic opportunities that exist, particularly in this moment, which I think is a quad-generational moment of disruption. It's really hard to understand it. We've seen the failure of the federal government under Biden's America to be able to pivot and to legislate properly against these economic opportunities.
Mayor, we'll watch very closely. He's certainly getting a lot of buzz. Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami and the latest presidential candidate.